Hello everyone, Marco Montemagno here, Super Summit, and what can I say today? I'm so excited. I'm really happy, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes, to have our guest today, Ryan Holiday. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing well.
So Ryan, you have to know that I usually hate to present my guests. That's the point, because I think that, if someone is here and works, in the tech industry or in the communication world and doesn't know who you are, well, probably there is something wrong. So I try to avoid, presentations of the guests because I think, just Google Ryan Holiday and it's great. But in your case, I have to say, I always never even buy the book before to do the interview with my guest, because I always think, well, I would like to hear from the guest, and if it's very interesting, I'll buy the book later. But in your case, I did my job. So I bought the book. To be honest, Ryan, here is a buy one get one half price, but I
All right.
didn't profit from it, and I started to read it. It's phenomenal, really. I really like it. So today I would like to talk with you, Ryan Holiday. The Obstacle is the Way, the Ancient Art of Turning Adversity to Advantage. When did it come out?
May 1st.
All right, May 1st, so it's absolutely fresh, and I know it's going great. And yeah, I would like to go with you a little bit deeper into the few concepts of the book, and then also go on other concepts related to communication.
Sounds
Before
good.
to begin, Ryan, one question that I have is the following.
Okay.
You wrote a previous book. Trust
I
me,
did.
I'm lying. And it was great. As I told you off the chat, I was one of the first buyer. I think you sold it on AppSumo, probably,
Yes.
something like that. And it was very interesting. It was like a good deal. And the thing that really caught my attention was the cover. That sort of Sin City cover was an amazing cover,
Thank you.
isn't it? I don't know how you did it, but it was really sexy. Anyway,
It's
I
actually
bought it.
it's actually funny. The publisher hated that cover idea at first, and it was a huge fight.
Really?
Um, yeah, it was a big like it because it's not like what business books are supposed to look like. It's definitely not what like a marketing book is supposed to be like. But I wanted it to be really different and provocative and sort of I wanted it to show that it was serious, but also like a bit playful, and that there was like something dark to it. And so I was I had a designer who did it. She did an amazing job, but it was a very tough sell with the publisher, believe it or not.
Amazing. I want to talk about your new book, but just to tell you, I was so impressed by the graphics that what I did, I remember you also did a video clip, and
Yeah, trailer.
I contacted the guys, I think Simply Film, not to
Yeah,
do that, but good guys, and I wrote to them and I say, guys, I want something like that, and they say, sorry, but you're not Ryan Holiday, so how can we do something like that? I say, yeah, you're right. So I gave up, but it was really impressive. Anyway, the other point that the reason why I tell you this is when you came out with the second book, The Obstacle is the Way. I thought, I don't know if I'm gonna buy this one. Maybe Ryan started to go more philosophical, and so I'm not really for the positive thinking, mood. So I was very, very skeptical in the beginning, and I realized that is something totally different. And now, actually, while I'm reading it, is really totally different. So I would like to start with this concept. When you came out with this, first of all, why did you change so much from marketing to let's say a philosophical book, which is not philosophical, and we'll talk about it in a second.
sure. Yeah, so it's interesting. I think, well, first off, I've been writing, online since 2005, 2006, and mostly what I would write about was philosophy. So for my fans, they actually thought the first book was a surprise, and they were like, "Oh, we thought you would write a book about philosophy," but instead I wrote this marketing book because I knew the marketing book would introduce me to a wider audience that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to do if I'd done it the other way around. So that was part of it. Like it's not as big a surprise as people think. But one of my mentors is Robert Greene. He wrote the book The 48 Laws of Power, and one of the laws of power is this idea of reinventing yourself. Like if you do the same thing over and over again, people start to expect certain things. They start to be less interested in it. The last thing I wanted to do was pump out another like a book that was more of the same. So I wanted to do something that was different, that made people think, and that made people have the exact reaction that you had, which is, what is this about? This is very weird. check it out and then be surprised that they actually like it. I think that reaction is very important when you're marketing stuff.
Right, and the cover is completely different now. So
Sure.
I think your publisher said no more strange covers.
Believe it or not, same designer. I actually use the same designer. It's just a matter of designing the right cover for the right book.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's right also because it's related with Stoicism and ancient philosophers. So now, the funny thing, Ryan, is the following. I saw in Europe, I would say in the last few years, coming up the fact that when you have a problem, you don't go to the psychiatric, but you go to a philosopher. So there is this new trend that I found very fascinating, and I thought, wow, when I started to read your book, this thing started to resonate with me, because I thought a philosopher solves a problem which is really concrete. It's nothing about theory, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's like a new trend, but that's also the oldest trend. Like the role of philosophers for most of ancient history was to help people with their problems, right? Like the idea of philosophy is to help you live a good, happy life. That's the whole point. And so what's happened is that as philosophy became more and more abstract, it started to feel like it had nothing to do with what you and I do, which is live in the real world and have businesses and do work. And so philosophy and life sort of went in opposite directions. But I think you're starting to see that change. The resurgence of Stoicism, which is a practical philosophy, has made people realize that there were wise people who lived thousands of years ago who went through the same problems that we did, and they figured out and they articulated a set of solutions to that problem, and we can avail ourselves to that wisdom if we want.
Right. Yeah, and it's absolutely concrete. So just to start with this, I would like to say, absolutely, guys, the obstacle is the way. It's not about philosophy, but entrepreneurs like me, like you, and business people. That can be really, really useful. By the way, Ryan, while you were speaking, obviously, I was noticing all the book behind you, and came in my mind. I did an interview with Seth Godin, and I said, Seth, but did you read all the books behind you? Very similar situation. And he said, no, I wrote the book, all the book behind me, and so I was a little bit afraid to ask you the same question, but did you read and write all the book behind you?
Well, two things. That's not actually all the books. If you go this way, I have a lot more. No, so obviously I've read most of them, and they're all books that are important to me, but Nassim Nicholas Taleb, who's I think a bit of a modern philosopher, his thing is this idea is you shouldn't just have books that you've read on your shelf. You should have the books that you haven't read and that you know that you haven't read, so they symbolize the knowledge that you don't yet possess. So a lot of these books are books that I want to read that I haven't had time for, that I eventually will get to.
I love it. Also because I was trying to listen to few interviews that you did, or writing what you recently, what you your thought, and what I like from your approach is the fact that you keep coming back to the point that it's not only about doing one thing only, focusing only on one thing, being a super maniac about one thing, but if you do multiple things, probably there is a meaning there. Can you elaborate on that? I think it's very interesting, because a lot of business people, they just focus on one thing and they say, okay, I just do only this 100% of my time. And I don't think is the best way to do it. What do you think?
Yeah, so I find that when you have, to do one thing and be really good at it is hard, right? You have to spend a lot of time on it. To be good at two things is very difficult, right? But if you want to do a lot of things, they can all feed into each other in a way that makes, so it's like I read a lot. So I'm reading a book about one thing that's designed to help me with, my marketing clients. And I learn something that then I can apply to my own books. Or when I'm researching for my books, I might learn something that helps with my clients. So for me, it's about sort of creating this sphere that has a lot of different inputs that help me with everything that I'm doing. And I find that they feed into each other and they help each other. Obviously, one way to sort of master something is to focus all of your energy on that thing and to live and breathe it. But that doesn't make sense for everyone, and that's not the right fit for everyone's personality. So I'm someone who has a lot of energy, I have a lot of different interests, and I've tried to find a way that they all can, like I was saying, feed into each other rather than trying to sort of jam, a square peg in a round hole or whatever.
Going straight to the obstacle is the way. And by the way,
Yeah.
these are all concepts that are coming out from the book. There is one phrase that really caught my attention, and is during a crisis period, bad companies close, good companies survive, great companies improve, or something like that.
Right. And from Andy Grove, one of the CEOs of Intel.
All right, which is is unbelievable. It's really like that. You really see the difference between bad, good, and great companies.
Right.
What are your suggestions on this topic? I mean, because if I think about countries like Italy, where I was born, Spain, Greece, crisis is still so strong over there, and people just see a huge obstacle in front of their eyes, whatever they do, if they running a business or for their personal life. So do you really see it happening again, or is just a positive way of thinking?
Sure. Yeah. So look, if you're fragile, any sort of adversity is going to break you. If you're strong, you should be able to survive a decent amount of adversity. But if you're robust, or what Taleb calls anti-fragile, then you actually benefit from these negative circumstances because you learn from what's happening, right? Like I quote Rahm Emanuel, who's an advisor to Obama. He's saying, you never waste a crisis, because a crisis is a chance to do something that you couldn't have otherwise done. Or maybe you just survive it, but everyone else around you who is weak, they die off because they can't handle the difficulties of the situation. So it's not so much about positive thinking, but it's about saying, okay, this thing happened, and it's a crisis, and it's negative. But how can I respond to that crisis in a way that puts me in a better position than I would have otherwise been in? So it's not about like sort of looking at the glass is half full, or putting on rose-colored glasses, or whatever cliche you want to use. It's about choosing to respond and make decisions based on this crisis in a way that moves you forward.
I see. Look, I might tell you this story, but because I think we're talking about a formula here, or a framework, I would say.
Yes. I think of it also as like an operating system.
Yeah. Excellent. So yeah, an operating system, basically. So something that is not only just an idea, but something that you can apply in your life and your business. And I have to say that I was impressed. I met Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins, the author and speaker, and I don't know, business coach now, everything. And for an interview a few months ago, and in the beginning I thought, maybe he's a positive thinking guy. So again, I was, as you see, I'm a little bit skeptic in the beginning, but then talking with this guy, I thought, this man, he has got a framework in place. So to go from a point A to a point B, he has got a system. He has got a formula. It's not something that he go in front of the mirror and try to smile every day and think that he's happy. So that's an important thing about your book that I'm finding, at least, and that there is this effort to create a framework and get useful tips from old and new examples. And you started with Marcus Aurelius, which is also my name. So I thank you for that. Thanks for choosing me, by the way, Ryan. Yeah. Why did you start with Marcus Aurelius?
So I was introduced to Stoicism. I was 19 years old. I got handed this book. It was the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. And it was this book that sort of shaped me to my core, because it was a totally different way of looking at the world. It's a different framework than the one I've grown up with or the one that I've been taught, right? And there was specifically a single quote, and that quote is what I based this book on. And he says, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. And so it's, when we talk about a framework or a formula, what he's saying is not just saying like, hey, this is how the world is. What he's saying is like, look, stuff is going to happen to you, and you don't control what that is. But you do control how you respond to that thing. And you may as well respond well. The Stoics say that everything is an opportunity, right? There is no good or bad. There are just opportunities. And you may as well respond to each one of those opportunities with the sort of the Stoic virtues, with creativity, with justice, with honor, with fairness, with generosity, with perseverance. That's how you should see the world. So Stoicism, which is the philosophy that sort of underpins the book, is complex and has a lot of different components. But I specifically wanted to talk about this one component, which is how do you respond to seemingly negative or disadvantageous events. And I think that's something that is sort of uniquely connected to how entrepreneurs have to think about the world. Because it's like, look, I have my own marketing company and I have a number of employees. Something terrible could happen tomorrow. I could get fired by a client. I could be engaged in some sort of controversy. I could get sick, whatever, right? That would all be bad. But I don't have time to feel sorry for myself. I can't hand it off to someone else because it's my company and I am the one who is responsible for it, right? And so I think that's an attitude that more and more people would be benefited by having, and I wanted to write a book about it.
Yeah, it's basically a no excuse and no alibi approach.
Sure.
Yeah, and you have also some sport related examples. I was a professional. All right, I don't know if I tell you this. All right, I'll tell you anyway. Okay. I was a professional table tennis player when I was a kid. Yeah, really. So my job was playing table tennis, and doing tournaments around the world. I was a mediocre table tennis player. I mean, around 250 in the world. So I was not, like top 10 players.
That's pretty good, though.
But anyway, and I was practicing, 9 hours per day, 11 months a year. You practice, and you play a match every weekend, and there is no excuse. I mean, you just have to go there and perform at your best. Doesn't matter what happened. And so I love these biographies, like Nadal or Djokovic, this kind of people. They really, I think you can compare them with business often because they have injuries and everything happen, audience. It's so hard, and they still have to win. So it's no excuse. And from what I see, you come back again to this concept that it's not about the facts, but it's about perception. Is it right?
Yeah, so I quote the samurai swordsman Musashi, where he talks about the difference between observing and perceiving, right? Observing is objective. You're just seeing the situation for what it is. Perceiving is where you bring things to the table. So to by analogy, it's like objective says like I'm down by 5 points, right? Perceiving says I'm down by 5 points, and that means I can't come back. I'm going to lose because I'm down 5 points. And so that's not really a helpful perception, right?
Excuse me. So basically, you add the judgment to the fact.
To the impression, yes. You add a judgment to an impression. And the Stoics are talking about how much easier life is when you stick with first impressions, because first impressions are what they are. Perceiving is what we bring to the table. It's our baggage. These are unhelpful thoughts. And so what I'm saying is that what we tend to do is we take something that happened to us and then we make it worse with the story that we tell ourselves. I got fired, my life is over. I got dumped, I'm never going to find happiness again, right? Or, my boss yelled at me, I'm going to get fired, I'm so angry about it, I'm crushed, whatever. We add these stories to what happens to us instead of seeing them clearly, right, and cleanly about what they truly are, and then getting to work to fix them.
Right. And I was thinking that I divorced a few years ago, okay? Not to make a personal, but often, if you make a personal example, is immediately resonated with other people connected. And by the way, after I want to say hi to all the people connected. And I remember when I divorced, I thought, that's it. My life is over. I will never, ever find a different situation. And today, that I'm so in love with an amazing woman, and I think, gosh, I'm so happy that I divorced. I could still be in that situation. It was one of the best things happening in my life, and it's incredible. Fact perception can be.
Look, it's crazy I think every single person, when they look back on their lives, they see things that they thought were terrible when they happened, but in retrospect, put us on the path that we are on today. and we wouldn't change them if we could. Like if you could go back, you wouldn't fix that relationship because it would have prevented you from meeting the person that you're with now and having your children and all these things. And so, like, we know objectively that failure is often good for us, right? We've seen with the passage of time how failure was a positive. And yet, every time something bad starts to happen to us, we get all upset and we get all worried and we get afraid that things are going to be bad. But we know that it works out. And so I think that's an important reminder the next time you're in a situation that feels overwhelming or scary or awful. It's like, look, how am I going to think about this in 5 years? How am I going to think about this in 5 months? How am I going to think about this in 5 hours? And if your answer is, well, I'm not going to feel as upset about it, well, then why subject yourself to that now?
Right. That's really, I think, one of the most important things in life, I would say. Ryan, let me just say hi to all the people. We are live, and I'm just checking where are people watching now coming from, okay? Because I'm always curious about the countries, you know, so I'm just checking the real-time analytics, and I see people, all right, United Kingdom, United States, Canada, Germany, Ireland, Australia, Belgium, Chile, which is going strong to the World Cup, probably are the only people not watching the football World Cup at the moment, Poland and 13 other countries. So guys, if you want to say hi or just a question or give us your feedback here in the chat, I am just monitoring it. All right, you have the book basically organized in 3 main areas. Correct me if I'm wrong. Perception, action, and will.
Right.
Is it the path and the flow to follow when you want to transform an obstacle into the way, or is just, you know, a way to organize the book, or is the right?
I don't know if it's necessarily a 1, 2, 3 kind of process, but they are very interrelated. So first, because think about it, something happens, you have to perceive, like the first part is perception, the next part is action, and then the final part is will. Obviously, perception precedes action. You shouldn't go around acting before you've thought or perceived something properly. So I think action is obviously, or sorry, perception is obviously the first step. And if you don't perceive something rightly, you can't act rightly. So first, it's how you look at it. Then it's what you do about a situation. And then finally, it's how do you respond to the consequences of that action, which is the will section, right? So, you know, you perceive a situation properly, you make a decision. Well, now that decision doesn't work. How do you continue on? That's where the idea of willpower and inner strength and acceptance and things like that, that's where those concepts come in. So I think they flow in sort of a continuous loop rather than it's like 1, 2, 3.
Okay. And do you think there is one phase which is more important than the other, or you have to be good in all of 3?
Well, yeah, I think they all matter a great deal. I think perception is probably both the easiest and the most important step, because again, if you can't look at something right, it really doesn't matter what you do about it or how strong you are.
Right. Well, what about you, Ryan? I mean, reading your book, the first thing that I was thinking is, all right, but how does he react? I mean, how does he focus, for instance? And
Sure.
I think that I heard that you, for instance, when you want to focus, you listen a lot of music, but you listen hundreds of times the same kind of song until you are over with that one, and you change, and maybe you are a little bit disgusted of the song that you were listening to. So what are your suggestions to find the right focus? Because my feeling is that for many people, probably also watching our conversation today, they logically understand the point, but it's very difficult when shit happens. It's difficult to stop there and say, okay, let's follow this formula.
Sure. So look, I wrote the book, and I'm not in the book for one reason. Right. I'm not perfect at these things either, and I'm not saying you should do what I do. I'm saying this is what we should do, and that this is what I try to do. These are the steps that I try to follow because it's what really smart people have written and learned through history.
Got it.
So, this morning I'm trying to write and I'm having an email crisis and a bunch of stuff are happening. I feel the same way that everyone else feels. But I have to remind myself, like, calm down. This isn't a big deal. This isn't worth getting upset about. Now, and then it's sort of center yourself and then start tackling these things one by one, and you'll have them crossed off the list, right? So I understand that all of this is easier said than done because I try it myself and I go through the same difficulties as everyone else. I think with Stoicism, what you realize is it's a process. It's something you work on every day, and every day you get a little bit better at. It's not something that you read a book and then magically you're transformed and you have this superpower. And I think anyone that promises you that is probably lying to you. There is no easy way, but there is a simple, straightforward framework for dealing with the difficulties that we face as entrepreneurs.
And also, I think that there are a few examples. You talking, for instance, about what's the name? Hurricane Carter, the basketball player, and the boxer. The boxer was also a movie from Denzel Washington.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, this guy, he went to the prison, so the way he was reframing the situation is fundamental. Or I think Nelson Mandela. So people who get such a big problems in their life, more than failing with your business. Okay, but I mean, these people they overcome really huge problems.
Well, I think one way to think about it is like, look, if someone like Hurricane Carter or Nelson Mandela can go to prison and leave, or Malcolm X can go to prison and leave better off for what happened,
crazy.
Chances are, whatever difficulty you're going through, you can emerge better off from as well, because your thing is a little bit less severe than like a triple life sentence.
But after you wrote this book, Ryan, your clients, they come sometimes to you and say, right, Ryan, let's not talk about marketing. Let's talk about, we have a problem here, and you become the kind of, consultant also for their, it is happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, and I see that with my employees, I see it with my clients. It's like, okay, we're all stressed out or all worried about this thing. But really, why? What do we get out of that? What we should be thinking about is, what does this allow us to do? What can we do now that we couldn't do before, that this is an opportunity to, so it's like maybe you've always wanted to say this thing, or you've always wanted to humanize your brand, or you've always wanted to, tell someone something that you were really passionate about. Well, this crisis or this scandal or whatever it is, it's a chance to sort of break through some of those reservations and speak really honestly and openly to the public, or whatever it happens to be. I try to focus not on the bad stuff that's happened or what you can't do, but what are the opportunities that are inherent within this situation that we can take advantage of.
Right.
Because it really, you don't get anything focusing on the other part.
Right. Control what you can control. That's
right. And focus your energy where you're going to have an ROI, not in the areas that you would rather focus on, but you're not going to get anything.
Right. Ryan, Seneca was practicing, right? I know he was practicing. But by the way, I think he died with cicuta. I don't know how you say in English, the poison. He was...
Yeah, so he took poison and he slit his wrists.
Right. So, but he was practicing, I mean, as a Stoicism philosopher, he was practicing what he was preaching. And I think like one day, a month or something like that, he was trying to be poor. So he was trying to see exactly what happened. First question is, do you try the same? Or like one day a month you go and you try to be poor? And the second question is, what's the best way you think is to prevent, to start to practice and understand the way to front and face obstacles? What's the right way, if there is a way to practice before the obstacle is arriving, so that you are ready when the match is starting, let's say?
Sure. So Seneca is a really interesting historical figure, right? He's one of the most powerful political advisors in Rome. He's one of the most rich and successful businessmen in Rome, and he's a successful writer all at the same time. And so to me, what I think is so interesting about Stoicism is he's not like he was just some little lecturer who had some smart sounding ideas. He was really doing this in real life, and his ideas were tested at the highest of levels, right? So I think that's fascinating, and I think it's a great sort of testament to the validity of the philosophy that we're talking about in the book. But yeah, one of the things he would talk about, even though he had this great wealth, he would practice not having it. So he wasn't afraid to lose it. So he wasn't afraid to take risks. He wasn't afraid to challenge people who might be able to, take that wealth away from him. So he didn't spend all his time trying to preserve his success. He could actually enjoy it. And I think that's something that, a lot of us have trouble doing. We don't want to think about the worst case scenario because it makes us deeply uncomfortable. And the Stoics are all about negative visualization, not positive visualization, right, but thinking about worst case scenarios and then becoming okay with them so they lose their power over us.
Okay. And what do you think, I just want to ask a few things more about this book. What do you think, let's try to give you an example. We definitely have startups watching us. And by the way, Amanda say, Ryan, I'm very inspired by your book, a great read, thank you. So that's good for you. And imagine that there is a startup. And I know, I think I launched Super Summit is my 6th or 7th startup. So I know what does it mean when you start and you struggle and you have to try to grow and you have so many problems just to grow your company. Right. And I think a lot of people are in this situation at the moment that are watching us. And what do you think are where would you start from? I mean, to start to see the situation in a different way, to get the obstacle upside down. What in your framework? I mean, if you should say 3 things, absolutely focus on these 3 things now.
Sure. Well, look, first off, I would focus on the fact that it's supposed to be hard. If it was easy to start a company and anyone could do it, there wouldn't be any money or reason to do so, right? It's supposed to be hard. And this is a process of winnowing out all the people who are not as strong as you. And then second of all, I would focus on the fact that what you're doing now, the lessons and decisions that you are doing, are training and practice for what you are going to need in the future. You are like starting a company front loads the difficulties of a business, right? You're having to decide what you stand for, how you run things, who's a part of your team, what your business. This is all the important part. This is like deciding you're going to get strong and go to the gym. You got to lift weights and it sucks and you're really sore at first. Yeah. But you get into a rhythm and you learn how to do things. And then I think finally you realize, like, look, there are going to be challenges, but it's these challenges that are going to present the opportunities that my business takes advantage of, right? A competitor starts to step into your space. Now you have to challenge that competitor, and that's how you're going to defend yourself. That's how you're going to carve out your business. A client might get upset with you. They might not want to work with you anymore. This is a chance for you to figure out what's wrong with your business, what you need to improve, what you need to change. So let's go back to the quote that we opened the talk with, this idea of the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. When stuff stands in your way, you just want to remind yourself, like, look, I'm going to respond to this in a way that benefits me and my business. I'm not going to be weak. I'm not going to run away from it. I'm not going to hide. I'm not going to take it personally. I'm going to see how I can benefit from this. And I'm going to face every single situation that way. And it becomes, over time, a recipe for not just optimism, but for greatness, because you're emerging from each obstacle better than you were before.
I love it. Ryan, let me talk a little bit about marketing, because, I mean, you have such a huge knowledge, and the legend says that 21 years old you became marketing director of American Apparel. It is right. Okay. So, which is, I mean, obviously amazing, but the situation today that a company has to face is that on one side you have so many media, social media, Twitter, Facebook, everything. And on the other side, there is so much noise and start to be very difficult to promote yourself. So, number one, I was curious to know, what do you do to promote your own book? Because I mean, if you're so good to promote other stuff, I mean, Tim Ferriss books or for your customers, I'm wondering what do you create to promote your own book? That's something I'm very curious about.
Yeah, look, I think the most important thing that people miss when they market stuff is they think that marketing is something distinct from the creative process as well, right? So it's like what happens is someone goes off and writes a book and then tries to figure out how to market it, which is a huge mistake. Instead, you want to think about how can you make something that's very easy to market? How can you bake the interesting, conversational, provocative parts into the thing? So, for me, like I wanted to write a book about philosophy, but like we were talking about earlier, most people don't think that they need philosophy. So I wrote it more as a book about how to solve problems in business and in life that happens to be influenced by philosophy. And then you try to make your process, you try to narrow down your focus to be as simple and straightforward and catchy as possible, right? Like I could have called this, a modern day introduction to Stoicism, but that's not a very captivating book title, right? I wanted to call it The Obstacle is the Way. And then I actually got it literally tattooed on my arm because like I thought it was such a good phrase. Like it's about creating catchy, interesting, compelling ways to describe who you are and what you're doing. And then I think the third most important part is understanding who influences people in your space, how is your product going to get sold, and then creating a marketing plan that takes advantage of that. I identified the influencers in this business space. I got them copies early. I designed a book I knew that they would be interested in. I brought some of them on as partners. Like Tim Ferriss actually published the audiobook of my book, which made him a huge advocate of it in a way that he wouldn't have if it was just some guy he knew who released a book, right? I think what so many authors do wrong is not just writing a book that they didn't think about how to market it, but then they don't think about marketing until 2 weeks before it comes out. Right. Seth Godin was saying that it takes 3 years to launch a successful book. And I don't know if I've been planning it for 3 years, but I've been planning this release and every facet of it for a really long time.
Right. The big question here is sometimes you work for a company. I will always remember one guy. One day was a presentation. I think it was with Guy Reynolds, Presentation Zen guy, and it was one guy from the audience that after the presentation said, "Gar, sorry, I have one question, and it was a great presentation, but I have to present shampoo, and it's not sexy, it's not good, it's probably I'm not." I don't even like it. So what could I do? And I don't remember what was his answer.
Well, what I would say is, if you don't think shampoo is interesting, and you don't like it, and you don't know how to talk about it in an interesting way, you shouldn't represent shampoo, right? I think that's the problem. Is people, if you're not passionate about this product, and so it's two things. One, if you're not passionate about it, you should leave. If you don't think that it's as good as it could be to get other people excited about it, then you have to change that. So, I think it's really interesting, like a company like Instagram. Instagram started as a different company. It was called Bourbon, and it wasn't good, and people didn't like it. And they changed, and they became Instagram. That's a marketing decision. Deciding to improve the product so it is exciting, so it's not boring, and so you actually do like it. That's marketing. That's great marketing, and I think a lot of people are afraid to do that. Right. So if I don't love a book, if I don't think an author did a great job, I don't work on it. I leave that to somebody else.
Okay, I like this point. Ryan, when you wrote Trust Me, I'm Lying, you basically revealed the way that I think like big blogging platforms, how they work, the fact that they need traffic, they need to produce tons of content, and so it's easy to, let's say, influence them with the right tactics and strategies. Right. So, and it was something that maybe in the industry we knew about it, but you were the first to write it, black
Sure.
on white, and people say, whoa, it really works like that. Yes.
Right.
Then I thought probably everything will change after the book. But then I
Right.
saw, Upworthy, BuzzFeed, and they are gigantic machines with super sexy, catchy A/B testing titles just
Right.
to collect clicks and views and so on. So it's still the same, or maybe the situation is even worse. What's your opinion about that?
Yeah, look, I wrote the book. I wanted to expose sort of how the sausage gets made, so then people can decide how much sausage they want to eat, right? And it turns out people still really like the sausage, I guess, or maybe the book hasn't affected everyone. I think we live in a media environment that has a lot of short-term toxic incentives, and that warps the final product that we see as consumers. I don't know what the solution is. I just knew that I wanted to write the book to show people, like, if I was thinking, like, if one guy, so you, reads it and it changes how they read the news, that's worth it to me. And whether it changes the system or not, I think is probably out of my hands. But I wanted to create that literacy for people who are interested in figuring out how it works.
Right. I would like sometimes to give you questions from the chat, but I try to recap the most interesting ones. I'm already doing it. But and sometimes I have to tell you also, Mercedes Fancelu. I don't know, Mercedes, where are you from? Uruguay looks like. If it's Uruguay, I can't talk with Uruguay people until there is Italy-Uruguay for a football match. So
Sure.
Mercedes Fancelu say, great book. So you have readers here. And tell me one thing, Ryan. I recently saw, just your opinion, I recently saw Uber and a lot of controversy, like a lot of controversy and protest in all Europe, in London, big strikes. And the effect was that Uber became, mainstream, 850% increase in their booking. Crazy, really crazy.
Right.
Do you think there is a strategy there to, fire controversy there, or is just,
Yeah, I think Uber has done a great job marketing themselves and what they've done a really good job is presenting themselves as the underdog who's sort of fighting these people who are resistant to change. I mean, Uber is worth $18 billion, so they're not like a little guy, but they make themselves. They've done a good job of attacking unions and taxi cab companies that don't have a lot of friends and governments that people aren't huge fans of, and making them seem like they're sort of a force for good. And what I think the reason, though, they benefit from all the controversy is the fact that they have a really good product. Right. And if you don't have a really good product, it doesn't matter how controversial you are. So it's like, if you make something that's amazing, then you can challenge these people, and the more they talk about you, the better it is for you.
Same, I would say, Airbnb, probably something similar. Great product, and then they say, let's change the way.
Right.
Right. So to recap your tip, 2014, if I go to Ryan Holiday with my company, whatever, startup or big companies, and I say, look, what I really should focus today is, number one, build a great product.
Yep.
Is there any specific platform or new way that you find interesting to market products, or are still the old same rules? So build a great product and find the right influencers and finger crossed.
Look, obviously that's important, but what I try to think about is like, look, where is everyone else like competing and trying to get attention, and then don't do that, because that's where everyone else is. So it's like, what is the new platform that people, and I try not to talk about specifics because it always changes, right? But it's like, where is there a group of people who you're going to have the greatest ROI with, rather than where are the most amount of people? Does that make sense?
Okay.
Where are your competitors trying to get all their customers? And I'll give you a great example. So Uber's big competitor is Lyft, right? It's another startup, and they're in all these cities. Lyft realized that Uber was banned in Austin, where I lived, and so Lyft and it was banned because there's like a law here. Well, Lyft was like, look, we're gonna say screw the law and we're gonna exist here anyway. We're gonna operate in violation of the law. And they did it, and they got like a 2 or 3 week head start on Uber. And now Lyft is huge in Austin because they attacked Uber where Uber was weak, rather than trying to make some huge push in New York City where Uber is much stronger.
Okay, so try to find, study your competitors and try to find places where they are not so strong, or do the opposite of what they're doing, basically.
Exactly, and look, that's military strategy as well, and I talk about that in Obstacle. You don't attack. Force doesn't go against force. You want to attack where there is surprise or weakness or vulnerability. That's where you want to focus your effort, because that's where you're going to have the most ROI.
I read a Boris Becker book once, biography. Becker, the German tennis player.
Okay.
And was one part where basically the question was, what was your secret to win? And he said, the formula for me is very simple. I play my strongest stroke against the weakest part of my opponent. Very simple.
That's a great way to put it.
And it works very well. And do you think, do you have any tip for companies here that maybe they don't have big budget? Because, if you are Coca-Cola, probably you say, okay, or Microsoft, they say, I have 1 billion, 3 billion, I will do my marketing strategy. I can do billions of things. But if you are a startup, again, you need to use Ryan Holiday's approach, so not orthodox, finding different ways. Any particular takeaways on this topic?
Yeah, so I wrote a book on growth hacking, and I think growth hacking is something that's worth looking at. It's an ebook. It's like $3. So I would suggest people check that out. It's called Growth Hacker Marketing. But basically, the way I see it is, if you don't have a huge budget, then you have to make up for it by being interesting and taking risks, right? So the reason that Microsoft needs $1 billion is because their products are really boring, and their ads are really boring, and their marketing is really boring. And so you have to pay to get it in front of people because people don't want to see it. When I work with American Apparel, we make really provocative, interesting ads that people want to see, that they really like. And so the less you have, the better what you do has to be. I think that's the rule of thumb.
Right. Another question here is, when do you start to talk with media? Because what I see often is a startup create his MVP or his product, and then prepare a good press release and start to spam with a press release all the journalists in the universe, TechCrunch if he's in the tech industry or wherever, and they try just to get coverage, and that's it. That's the strategy, basically. A lot of pushing with the journalist. When is the right moment to talk with journalists, and how?
Yeah, well, I think you have to ask, what are you actually trying to get out of the coverage? Just being on TechCrunch doesn't do anything for you. You have to ask why and what for. And you have to be strategic about it. And you have to say, okay, if we're going to be on TechCrunch one time, do we want it to be today? Or is it actually better for it to happen a month from now or 6 months from now, when we're actually prepared to take advantage of it? So discipline is really important when it comes to doing the media, and being strategic is important as well. I think about it, it's like, when are we going to have our best, most compelling story about ourselves, and timing it that way. And it's usually not as early as you think. And if you can't get customers without media coverage, then I would evaluate what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, if your product can only get people to sign up for it because TechCrunch wrote about it, there's probably something wrong with what you're doing.
All right. So, and where do you start then? What's the first part? Where would you start from?
Of getting media coverage?
No, just when you want to promote, you launch and you want to promote.
Right. It's like, where is your? I mean, I think part of the problem is people think you need huge media outlets when really you need. I mean, you have an audience that watches this show, right? Chances are you could probably drive more users than new signups than than the New York Times or whatever, right? So it's about finding the people who can drive you actual real customers. Like, you know, we talked about Uber. Uber launched its Uber got all its customers in San Francisco, and then every year it did great South by Southwest marketing when people from all over the world would come to Austin and use Uber for the first time and then take it back to their cities with them. So it's about finding out where your people are and how to get at them. That's the core critical function of marketing. It's not getting your name in headlines.
Right. Ryan, a couple of minutes
Yeah.
before the end, just curious about your next steps. Well, what's coming next for Ryan Holiday? The Obstacle is the Way, okay, coming out right now, but I know that you write like crazy. You know, you're always writing a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always trying to write. I try to write 1 or 2 articles a week, so that keeps me busy. I'm working on my next book, and then I have a marketing company that I consult with a very small select number of clients, but they're big ones that I like a lot, that I believe in what they're doing, and I focus on that.
Very good. Ryan, thank you so much. Thanks for watching to all the people. Ryan Holiday, The Obstacle is the Way, and blue or purple cover in UK, white in US. So in the beginning I thought it was a different book because I always saw the white one, but in UK, guys, let's say it's a purple. It's not even blue. And great book. Thank you so much, Ryan, and see you soon. Bye.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.